Alright, welcome back everybody. How you doing? Welcome back friends and fiends. We're going to jump in. We're going to do a little bit of a double feature. TTRPG first look. We're going to look at a couple of things that came out for free RPG day. We are going to take a look at Wizard Riders, a post-apocalyptic wizards biker gang RPG. And the other thing we're going to look at is sampler for the Lore Master deck, used for building lore, world building, those kind of things. Things I picked up on free RPG day, and I figured we would take a look at them. What better way to start than by just jumping into it? It'd be a pretty straightforward one. So let's take a look at what we got. So we have, let's pull up the description first for Wizard Riders. One moment, please. One moment. Catalyst. There we go. Okay. Let's share them. This is Wizard Riders Arcane Biker Grimoire. Ride a motorcycle at the end of the world with Wizard Riders from Catalyst Game Labs, a dying earth magic-infused engine-revving RPG. Ride broken highways in search of adventure, arcane tech, and a little more of that really good ale you had that one time. That's the setup. Obviously, we talked about this a little bit before free RPG day happened, and it's got a very specific vibe to it. It's got kind of that OSR styling with the cover, the colors, the distressed aspect of it, which is funny because there's not that much distress. The distress really comes up on that picture, and this one it's really light. It's like really light. Doesn't come through nearly as much. But it's got that kind of desaturated kind of color a little bit. That's got that nice hue to it. And that's what we're going to be talking about first. And that's kind of the setup. So it's kind of gives this old school D&D vibe to it. And then has this very 70s, 80s, 70s primarily, kind of motorcycle club culture. So, let's talk a little bit about what I expected. I talked a little bit about this beforehand. What I was expecting was pretty much kind of what it has on the front. I was expecting more of a stripped down OSR style game with plenty of gonzo. I mean, you are wizards riding magic motorcycles at the end of the world. I was kind of expecting plenty of weird stuff. Not dissimilar from my expectations of something like DCC Dungeon Crawl Classics. Had that feeling about it. It's not necessarily my preference for a main item TTRPG, kind of like DCC, is that I like them, but I'm not sure that I want to run like long-term campaigns and stuff like this. But they are really nice for like that amuse-bouche, kind of like a one-off, do some one-shots as an occasional thing, or as a series of misadventures maybe between longer, like palette cleansers between longer form campaigns that I might play something a little bit more of a serious crunchy system, something a little bit more like a D&D or Pathfinder or Savage Worlds or something World of Darkness, you know, the kind of the standard go-tos Call of Cthulhu. Pretty much my expectations kind of looking at this was, what if Jack Vance's Dying Earth met Easy Rider, which if you are, that's an old reference, I feel like, even for me. So if you don't know what that is, Jack Vance's Dying Earth was very influential on original D&D, and that's the reason why we have called Vancing casting. It's from Jack Vance. And Easy Rider is a movie. Go look at it. It's an interesting movie, let's put it that way. But it's kind of about these guys that ride motorcycles. And it's kind of their misadventures as they kind of go through stuff and deal with things. I think that the packaging really does a pretty good job of selling that. Talked about, got that little bit of distress, though doesn't come through as much on the actual printed cover as it does on the image on screen. Oh yeah, one thing my friendly local game store, FLGS, employee was really gassed about was the character sheet design, which is back here. Oh well, you can. Well, but it's got gears and nuts and bolts and kind of like the fuselage gas tank. It's got a crystal ball, got bike chains and safety pins and bobby pins used for picking locks and all sorts of pretty kind of stuff in that very cartoony style that's very common with kind of this time period that is trying to emulate or step into. I think it very much does that. Now, this was kind of my first red flag. But this is that I always get a little antsy about any game where I see that there is a very artful character sheet. Because I don't know why I have this correlation in my brain. I don't know. Maybe it's just my experience. Is that anytime that I see a very fancy character sheet, I feel like it's often making up for this. I feel like when I look at things like D&D or Pathfinder or Call of Cthulhu or Savage World, any of our like kind of well-known systems, then most of them have really, really utilitarian character sheets. It's about the information that's on the sheet. It's not about a whole bunch of art design. So usually when I see something that's got a whole bunch of art design on it, it's because maybe it's trying to obscure that maybe there's not maybe their focus necessarily isn't in the place where I think it would be on the game instead of on the presentation. But let's keep going. That's enough for me. We're gonna step into, that was sort of my expectations going into it. So now what did I actually get? So this thing very much rips that 70s motorcycle club leather vest grungy kind of tone. You can see art on the inside of them at a campfire. It's got this very kind of, it's got a relatively lighthearted tone to it. It's got a lot of flavor text. Like this entire page is flavor text. It's actually like in character dialogue, just kind of talking about the world and stuff that's kind of going on. Kind of get you into everything that's how the game's gonna play at the table. I like all of that. The art does that. The play examples do that. Like here's more art in here. Zapping some guys on the road from the motorcycle. Has that kind of stuff. So it feels very much like that. Like those snippets have a very, very strong writing tone in the dialogue and all that stuff. And the descriptions are really good. Like let me see if I can find a good one. Forth is rough and wild, and if you spent much time wandering it, you're gonna get hurt. You also might not have a lot of time to recover naturally, especially if you're always on the move. And this is the introduction to the healing aspect. So it always kind of reaffirms to you where you are as far as the fiction, which is really nice. It's really well written in that aspect. I really like that aspect. Now, because of that, I wish there was more of that strong writing in the actual play adventure, which is in the back. But besides this one kind of opening dialogue, which is like, let me tell you kids a story, and then it's kind of flashback to the events that player characters are going to trade in. But everything after that is pretty utilitarian, which makes sense because the adventure is only that much, so it's not much. So because of that, but I wish that there was a little bit more of that strong writing in the adventure itself, because even if it came at cutting some of the dialogue and other stuff, like I said, there's an entire page of basically just dialogue in here that is just flavor about the setting. If you cut that just to give the quick start, nothing more than the GM being able to bridge that gap easier between the flavor of the game as it's explained in the rules to how to get it to the table. Having some of that flavor text in like loud boxes or something like that could be helpful. And so I think that was a little bit of a missed opportunity, because this adventure, we'll talk about the adventure here in a second, but the adventure is quite short. And when we're talking about things like saving some space, like that page, it's just dialogue for the most part. There's also 21 special powers in here. They're kind of their spells. So it starts here, goes through there, goes through there, and ends on this page. So you have pages of special powers, which seems, I thought, aggressive for an adventure that's shorter than the powers description of the magic spells you might cast in that. I thought was interesting choice, because they have all like these big paragraphs too. Funny what they are. And they're fun. Like the special powers are fun and interesting, and I could definitely see they're just vague enough that you can kind of use them for a lot of different things, which I like. I like spells that are like that can be a little bit more utilitarian if you use a little bit of brain power to get beyond what explicitly it says on the page. But 21 seems like a lot for a 2-page one-shot adventure, especially when so many of them are combat, and there's not a ton of combat in the adventure. So very interesting. I feel like they could have doubled up a little bit. They probably could have cut these by maybe half, I think, and been okay. So what about the system? So the system, despite its trappings, is in fact not an OSR style system. It's straight up just not a D20 system at all. It's not even a class-based RPG. It is in fact a skill-based RPG. So very interesting. It uses Catalyst Dice Core system, which was not a system I was familiar with previously. But taking a look at it, it is interesting. So you have different die sizes that are assigned according to capability, and you roll them and sum them, add them all together to beat a DC or a target number. And let me get an example. Roll. Usually it's like ability plus, yeah, there it is. Skill die plus your linked attribute die plus any feat die. But most of the time you're going to be rolling up to 3 dice. And there are ways specifically within the system that you... So the die sizes coordinate to your capabilities as a character. And there are ways to shift the dice sizes up and down. It's not too dissimilar than, and I wanted to bring this up because we talked about it a little bit last year, is Shift, which is something that came out in the free RPG last year, which has a very similar kind of, you change the size of the die mechanic. So that's also represented in here. So if you liked what I talked about Shift last year, you're probably going to like the stuff that's in here about it. It also has, because that it's a little bit crunchier than I was kind of expecting. This dice math is a bit noodly once you have like 3 different dice in a pool, potentially all of different sizes, and the ability to move those sizes up or down depending, and you get to choose as the player which ones you move. So it's a little bit more math than I was really expecting. Interesting. And they do have a nice chart on here. Pins for it. I believe I've gone too far. Feeling. There it is. Pensive rating table. Down here. Where they kind of take it and then give you the average rating for those dice. Which could be useful, but it's also a useful chart. Like if you're looking at it and you're trying to figure out which die do I want to change, looking at this chart would be very helpful for you. Give you an idea as to numerically what you're changing. Because it kind of gives you the average of all those numbers. So yeah, I mean that's kind of what I got. It's very, very interesting. Let's put it that way. Things that kind of surprised me or stuck out to me is this part. There's a Magus cycle, which is your motorcycle. Magus cycle bonding, where you go through this thing about like how do you bond better with your gear. trying to take something like D&D's attunement and turning it more into something that's actually more engaging, both in a roleplay sense and in mechanically, and it gives you benefits if you do this thing. So every time that you increase your bond with the mage's cycle, get some more bonuses out of it. And there's stuff in here like an example of basically do it through ritual. Here's some possible options to make the bond cycle feat easier that can serve as a guideline for designing your own method. So you're encouraged as the game master to be like, you and your player help make this up. Like, it's not a form fillable kind of. The rider could take the cycle on a long ride, attempting several stunts along the way before attempting to bind the cycle. Each successful stunt could provide an upgrade on bond cycle feat, up to 3 upgrades. Let's do a better one. The rider takes the cycle out in the dead of night, maybe during a full moon, maybe a new moon, and hunts down a spike wisp. They capture it, put it in a stone box, then place it in a fire or furnace so it is cremated. Then they rub spike wisp ash all over the critical parts of the cycle. The game master decides dedication reduces the difficulty rating by 4. Try to make that bond check. So it's very cool. Like, it kind of gives you all these ideas about, oh, go out and come up with kooky ideas as to how to bond better with your Vegas cycle. I'd love to take some of that stuff and cross-pollinate this with something like a D&D. I think would be very useful to increase things like how to make a warlock packs a little bit more narratively fulfilling, as well as provide maybe additional mechanics with that, mechanical benefits. Same thing for something like ranger beast companions or a paladin steed or anything that, even a wizard familiar or something like that. Anything that has like a creature or a bond or a very specific item that they use like that, like an arcane focus or like thing, like how do you create a better, anything that gets attunement basically. Even though I guess none of those companions actually give you attunement. But similarly, anywhere that there's some sort of connection or bond or something like that between the PC and some of the stuff they use in the game, being able to create this more immersive, more mechanically beneficial thing, and making that a priority aspect, and really liked it. I think that's a really neat idea. So the system also uses, I was just in the fighting section. It. Yeah. So it uses attack and defense roll. That means that every time that the players attack, they roll attack rolls for the characters, as would in most games. But also when they're getting attacked, they roll defense rolls. And this isn't like a Powered by the Apocalypse engine or something like that, where the GM doesn't rolling dice and only the player side rolls the dice. No, the GM is also rolling those attacks. So for every attack action that you take in the game, you're double dipping because 2 people are actually going to be rolling the die at all times. Now there is a way that they say, I just touched on it with the defense rating box table, where you can use the average of that. And I would think if I was running that, I would encourage groups to use that defense rating table, simply because doing 2 rolls instead of 1 is already going to slow the game down. You have to get somebody else's attention, have to get them to roll the right things, they have to figure out what they rolled, you have to then roll your things, and you have to figure out what you roll, then you have to compare the 2 things, and then move on to the damage step. So it's already more than, I rolled this, does that hit your AC or whatever? Yes, you take this damage. So it's just adding a little half step in the middle of this that I think not really necessary. I'm not sure if that adds a ton to the game. On paper, it doesn't seem to, but I can always be wrong. but I would think maybe I change that a bit. And maybe use those contested rolls for more special moments, like, oh, I think like grapple situations, or trying to stop a creature from doing something, and using those opposed rolls for like those high tension moments, and then using the defense rating for most of the time, most attacks, and I think we'll just smooth everything out and make it run a lot quicker and easier. But there is also the daring mechanic, which is the mechanic that I do like. So that's unwritten. So the daring mechanic gives you an opportunity as a player, I believe it's once per session, or once per I think they can only use it per combat. Okay, so per scene, basically. And you can spend daring, which is your ability to, you can try to change your order and initiative by rolling a die. And this is specifically something really only player characters get to do. Most NPCs don't get to do it, with the exception of epic NPCs, which are like your big villain boss kind of guys. They can also do it, but most of the time only the PCs can, which is a really cool way to, you know, if you roll badly or you roll really well but you don't really have anything to do with top the initiative, to swap initiatives with people. Really interesting mechanic. I really like it. I like stuff like that messes with the initiative order. It reminds me of some other systems where you track initiative based off of the actions you do in the round, rather than having a static initiative or using side initiative or something like that. So it works a little bit like Final Fantasy, like ATB system. So it's like depending on what you do on your turn, depends on how many slots back in initiative you move. And the system that jumps to my mind is like Exalted, where initiative is actually a wheel instead of a line. Instead of marking everything down, you have to use a wheel because you're constantly moving back and forth around it. So if you want to do a few things on your turns, you're going to have more turns probably before somebody who tries to do a really big action. I guess Bravely Default is a little kind of like that. If you want another video game reference, I guess it kind of works like that. Not quite the same, but similar in its own way. But yeah, like that. The thing that also surprised me was the initial adventure that they give you, because the adventure is called The Vanishing of Dotshire, or Dotshire. And it's interesting a little bit because this is a game, Wizard Riders, as it says on the name, about riding magic motorcycles. And most of the adventure that they give you is just kind of a walk-around investigation, which is interesting. It seems to me like a little bit weird, like a weird afterthought choice in the adventure design, that spend all this time talking about everything's leading up to, oh, this game's about riding motorcycles at apocalypse of a fantasy world. And then you get to the adventure, and the adventure does give you that flavor, but then doesn't really do much with the motorcycles. There's one optional encounter at the end that you could potentially use your motorcycles in like a more potent way, but even that, in the way they describe it, doesn't make it clear whether your motorcycles actually play a part in that encounter or not. It's more like, and if you're still got some time in your session, you could have this fight. I just find it strange because each one of the pre-generated characters they give you has their own specific bite. That are all different. So it seems weird to give these pre-gen PCs that thing, and then provide an adventure which you don't really use them a ton. It's very weird, and I'm not really sure. It makes me feel like I'm missing something when I'm reading it, but I've read this adventure twice now, and you can see this is the kind of drawing that they give the PCs in characters, so this can be a little handout if you wanted, of what the village looks like. It's a tiny little place. There's nothing really to ride around in. Like, I guess you could ride around in a circle if you really wanted to, but there's not much going on in it as far as reasons that you would be on your bike. And I think kind of because of that, it didn't leave me with a very clear idea of what a campaign of Wizard Riders would really look like. Like if I had to guess, I would think that it's mainly a campaign of it would be like disparate, encapsulated bottle adventures, where you just kind of murder hobo your way around this dying Orth, and you visit a new place and you deal with that monster of the week affair, and you move on to the next place. And I think that's probably okay for some groups, but I don't think I've necessarily played in a group where we wouldn't tire of that pretty quickly. And I know that I would tire for that on both sides of the screen, both running it and both playing it, because I would feel like I'm not really building towards anything. That's why I'm like, I don't think I could play this as some sort of long form campaign. I think for like dropping things, or like if you want to continue to have characters that you dropped into between adventures of a different ongoing campaign, like maybe I need more time to prep an adventure or something like that, like a big dungeon or something like a D&D in D&D. I was like, I'm not gonna be ready in time, so let's do like a one shot of Wizard Riders again. Everybody still has their characters from last time. Let's just use the same characters, and this will be the next place that you guys went to while you're revving around on Old Orth. Like that I could see of, but I assume the core rules when they come out, because as far as I know they're not out yet, will provide a little bit more guidance or a better illustration of what a full campaign arc might look like in that game. But for now, I'm left a little scratching my head, especially considering how little the motorcycles are really involved in the initial adventure that they give us. So I guess the summation is did it deliver on the promise? Well, we got the promise up here, right? Ride a motorcycle at the end of the Earth was Riders from Catalyst Games. Dying Earth, yeah, I think that it very much hits that Dying Earth, magic infused, engine revving RPG. I think it does all that stuff. It's got a lot of flavor in it. Broken highways in search of adventure, arcane tech, and a little bit more of that really good ale. So if that is the description we're going with, I think it nails that. This idea that this is not maybe like a big save the world kind of big damn heroes kind of game. So if you're wanting that, this is not going to be the right kind of game for that. And it is just kind of a beer and pretzels, run around, fart around kind of thing. So I think that what I was looking for was a little bit more clarity of that intent in this. I'm not sure that I got that one way or the other, but I do think it does deliver on that promise, if that is truly the promise that we're trying to run. As far as other aspects, is that I'm not sure that the crunchy nature of the system, having those kind of in-depth dice maps, really lends itself to what feels like a beer and pretzels bikers at the end of the world. It's kind of the good times during the end times kind of feeling. It has a very I'm trying to think of thing like the anime Zom 100. You know that, which is kind of like the bucket list in the zombie apocalypse of just like stuff that the main character wants to do before they will most definitely be turned into a zombie. And so having that kind of feel, and I'm not sure that the crunchy system kind of matches super well with that beer and pretzels kind of mentality of the game that it's trying to go for. And I think in the end, you know, look, here's the thing, is that we're both looking at the covers. I got the cover right here, you're looking at the cover on screen. This is I feel like is selling me a different game than what the interior of this. I was expecting this OSR Gonzo system, again, very kind of DCC kind of feeling thing, and I don't think it necessarily lives up to that expectation. In fact, I think that and this is really something that's specific about the cover design, I think the inside illustrations do a lot better job of that. Like, you have guy getting chased by a goggler on the interior, where it's got much more of that kind of vibe, but this outside cover gives me a very different feeling and different expectation based off of the art and the layout here. And I think this cover design, and I think it is objectively cool, especially once you get if you look at the larger image of it, and you realize that wizard is wearing a black, like, motorcycle leather jacket, which is, you can't really tell in the cover, but that is what he's wearing. I think that does a little bit more harm than good for the game, because I picked it up expecting what was on the cover, and looking on the inside and looking at the game, I'm like, that doesn't feel like what I got. Not that what I got was bad, but it's not what I was expecting to get. And so anytime you have mismatched expectations with what you get, people are not going to be as happy as they could be with it. That said, I liked what I saw of the dice core system. I think there's more stuff to be found out here, and I'm going to be interested what they do with it going forward. That's about all for that. So similar alternative recommendations. If you are interested in the dice core system, but maybe Wizard motorcycle gangs are not your motorcycle clubs, I should say, maybe not what you're looking for, they also apparently have a Frostpunk, like the video game Frostpunk TTRPG quick start that also uses the same system. Very interesting. And they have a forthcoming book, He Who Fights with Monsters. Both of these use the same dice core system, so Catalyst is very much all in on the dice core system. They think it's good, and I have no reason to argue with them at this point. Is that it looks interesting. I'm happy to see what they do with it going forward. And other things they also have, as far as I know, unless it's changed, the Shadowrun license. So if you're looking for a different type of, I guess, post-apocalypse, or at least dystopian fantasy future TTRPG, check that out. If you want a crunchy post-apocalyptic fantasy, I would probably recommend Numenera as an alternative. Is Monty Cook. So, you know, it comes from a D&D designer, and you can check it out. It's very interesting. It's got a lot of, it's very, very science fantasy. So if you're interested in things like like the Pern series of books or the Shannara series of books, you're gonna very much feel at home here with kind of feeling. Also a big focus on kind of consumable items, which is very interesting. I don't think we've talked about, yeah, this is from 2016. It was before I was doing video, so we might look at this one day. Yeah, interesting system. But yeah, those were my thoughts about Wizard Riders. It looks interesting. I would definitely be down to play or run it as kind of a one-shot. I think the dice core system is interesting, but I want to see what they do with it. I'm not sure that I can see myself really diving too deep this specific genre or iteration of that system, or expression of that system, I should say. I think I would be interested in something else that they do. All right. I guess we should move on to our next one. Of course, if you guys have a question. And that was Catalyst offering for the 2026 Free RPG Day. And we want to look at Story Engine. Now, the Story Engine. Weave a web of intrigue with this 35-card demo of the Story Engine Lore Master's deck. Double-sided cards elevate any RPG campaign with powerful factions, notable figures, legendary objects, must-see locations, mythical. over 8 quadrillion prompt combinations. So it says. And I believe them. It's very easy to get that number with just a few variables. This is what it looks like. And they were also there last year, so if you've watched last year's video, or I guess if you haven't, ta-da! 2 separate products, same company, same kind of vibe. Could technically be used together, in a way. So let's talk a little bit about it. So what was I expecting when I picked this up? So this was essentially a second chance after the previous deck of worlds that I picked up, where I liked the idea. I'll go ahead. Where I liked the idea of these cards, but the execution didn't really match, I felt like, with the... By the way, so the packaging, everything you need is actually on the inside of the package. You get these cards. Worlds. And they have stuff. Go. There we go. So, you know, are they the most beautiful cards in the world? Not really. At least this old one. Not super. They're very utilitarian. Doing what they do. And you essentially take them down and you stack them up on top of each other, laying them down on, and tucking them under other cards to give that card attributes or aspects, whatever you want. So, last time my biggest gripe with it was that I liked the idea, but I didn't think the execution stood out. Primarily, I thought, oh, this is kind of a little bit noodly to do what I'm doing. I felt like I personally would have preferred to have roll tables rather than cards. But I do understand that other people are a lot more tactile, a lot more visual learning. And because of that, I understand that there is fully an audience for this type of product, who I assume that the author also understands that and is probably one such person. But when it came to the Lore Masters deck, I was expecting it to be similar in its usefulness and awkwardness, but I was hoping that Story Engine, the publisher, would impress me with this variation card stacking format. And I also expected the superb packaging, which we got. So the packaging is exactly as I imagined. It's this really beautiful die-cut, well-created folding design that I showed you in the other deck, but this one too. Exactly the same sort of layout. So you open it up from the back, all your instructions on the interior. So there's no extra things. You don't have to worry about losing the instructions or anything like that. As long as you can keep the package, you'll have it. Cards themselves are very similar. Like I said, they're very utilitarian. They use very flat, like, icons with words and very minimal background patterns. Very easy. They're very utilitarian, and not in a bad way, but also has a little bit of a pattern design in the background. So it's not fully bland. There is some artfulness that goes into it. So I do think that it still suffers from that same thing where there's this sloppy kind of tactile nature, because you're trying to put cards under cards like this. Hard enough that I'm trying to do it holding it, but like holding it up on my hand is already hard enough to do. Trying to keep like multiple things poking out from under it. I always feel like if I tap the table, everything's going to come undone. So not a big improvement there. I wouldn't expect there to be. I think that the Story Engine knows exactly what they're making. So either you're going to be on board for that idea, this card tucking kind of system, or you're not. I'm already off, but I would prefer roll tables, but that is a me thing than cards. But visual learners, like, I know that my partner was quite taken with them because they were like, oh, my partner's very visual learner. So they find that a lot more useful than a book of roll tables, where it's hard sometimes for them to imagine how those things connect. Whereas for me, I don't necessarily have that issue. But overall, I will say that Story Engine really cooked on this one. They really knocked it out of the park. It's much better than, I think, the Deck of Worlds. One of the things that I want to highlight more than Deck of the Worlds was focused entirely on location, creating only locations. In this one, you're gonna get a lot more than locations. You've got locations, well, that's what I've got on top. But in addition to locations, you also have creatures, objects, figures, factions, and there are some more that are not included in the sampler pack. I think there's 2 or 3 other types of cards. So it already gives you, from the lore aspect, a lot more versatility as to what you can engage with. Hey, what's going on, GG? Going. So I like that aspect of it already, giving me a lot more versatility than just trying to make locations, which I thought really kind of held back the other one. But let me talk about what surprised me, because this is where things are really going to take off for this. It's the linking element that's the biggest part. And I don't know if this will probably be very difficult to show on screen. But I think it is the thing that very much elevates the Lore Masters deck from the previous offerings. Yeah, we can do this one. So many of the cards have tags with symbols on them. I'll put this up. See how well it can focus. Focus. Yeah. Damaged or ruined by a faction. He's got a little icon on there. Well, that icon means that there is another card that you will pull and add next to that. So you would take a faction card and also tuck it under there. So you might add the faction Monarchy and drop that in. The idea being is that as you do that, once you are done building your little stack of cards that are tucked for that one stack, you then pull out things like the Monarchy and make it its own new stack, in which you then start adding more stuff underneath it. And eventually you start creating links, and then you create more links, and before you know it, you're finished the stack, you've taken away all those different card types, and you have this sprawling thing of linked stacks. If you want to, you can easily utilize most, if not all, of the 35 cards in this demo pack with those linked stacks, like in one go, just for one location or one creature or whatever you're doing the stack for. So if you really want to, you can use pretty much all these cards. You can use them all for one thing. Creates this super deep web of lore that's with connections about specific location, creature, or object, figure, faction, or the other things that aren't included here if you want to go for the full meal deal 300 card deck. So there are what I would say potentially overwhelming aspects of that. I think if you could definitely take this, and if you're not careful, spiral out of hand with World Builder's disease, where you just like keep making stuff and keep making stuff and keep making stuff and keep making stuff just for the sake of making stuff. I think that you do have to exercise quite a bit of restraint when you're doing world building, especially with the demo pack, but even with the full pack, I think like you could really spin out and use a whole lot of cards for one area and make something that should be a molehill into a mountain. that may not serve your game in that aspect. So that's really kind of the only negative thing I have to say about it. Like, they're really fun. And I think especially if you go in for like the 300 card one, there's so much stuff that's in here that you're going to come up with some really interesting stuff. There are some things that maybe don't jive depending on what kind of setting you're doing. Like this one, here's an item here that's a glider. I'm like, okay, well, I don't imagine in the current campaign that I'm running that people probably have glider tech. It's not that big of a deal, but there are some cards that are like that where you're like, oh, well, I couldn't use that aspect of the card necessarily, or I'd have to come up, like, extrapolate something else that it could be that's glider alike and try to make that. So there is some stuff like that. It's not a big thing. Nice thing is that every card's going to give you 4 options on it anyways. So you're never probably going to be stuck when you draw a card, even if you get something that maybe doesn't work in the type of world or setting that you are building in. But it is something to keep in mind that they're not all... And I mean, how could they possibly try to orient that depending on your specific kind of setting? They don't know that. They are doing a little bit of a kitchen sink, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that... If anything, it makes the tool more useful to more people, which is always a good place to be in your design, stuff like that. So, really the summation, there's not that much to talk about with this one. Unlike the RPG, Wizard Riders has a whole bunch of pages of us to go through. This is just a stack of 35 cards. And, I mean, we could highlight a few things off of it, but... Let's pull things out, and we're gonna do a little thing down at the end here. So this creature has a thick skull plate or mucus layer. It allows you to create like custom creatures. Flippers, fins, or hooves. This would be a faction. And they are the masters of a tool or weapon, and then it gives you a little token to go to object. And if you want to object, you might get, say, here we have aircraft, javelin, tongs, or boots. So you might go, oh, I don't know which one to that. A faction who has mastery over boots, unless you have something very interesting, like if you were building something like in an Arctic area, you might be like, oh, these are the only people who have figured out how to make something like snowshoes or skis. You might extrapolate that from boots. Interesting. Or tongs, you could extrapolate that to being like they have some sort of very specific smithing method that only they understand. Javelin, you could really just be a javelin. They're just really good at javelin. Okay. Interesting one. Sometimes you gotta use a little extra brain power to kind of take it off what it shows you. These are kind of nice, like little inspiration seeds, but you are gonna have to water them a little bit with your own mental energy to really get them to spark. And then the other one was aircraft. So again, same problem for me that I would have with like gliders, but I could use aircraft to being like, oh, they have some sort of trained flying mount, which maybe jives a little bit better with my world. If those of you who have been watching the solo RPG, that would be very similar to like the Rookland Fairy, which is a giant crow, like a rock-sized crow, like ROC rock, not a stone-sized bird, not that, but like a big guy. So that would be how I would interpret probably something like that for my own world. So you still gotta use a little bit of brain power. It's not gonna do the work for you. I know, right? So you're gonna have to use a little bit of brain power, but it does give you ideas, which is really helpful. Especially if you feel stuck. So, did it deliver on the promise? Well, can you weave a web of intrigue with 35 card demo? Yeah, I think absolutely so. You can create some powerful factions, notable figures, some legendary objects, some must-see locations and mythical creatures, and the best part is that all of those are probably going to end up being connected very well. So, I do for sure like it better than Deck of Worlds. I think it worked out way, way better. Exceptionally better. I do think that the form factor is still not my jam. Like, I still don't really necessarily want cards. I would prefer to have roll tables. That's a me thing, though. I recognize that. The nice thing that I like about this is that I could lay out a whole bunch of cards and take a photo of it, and then be like, I'll figure this out later. Which I can't really do with a roll table. And if you're still on kind of the fence about how you feel about it, I figured that I would share one of the things, the spread that I built when I was trying to test this out. In my example, the first thing I started off, and I just kind of pulled a random card. I could probably pull it here. Is I pulled there it is, a crypt. I was like, all right, so I got a crypt, and so then what you do is you take all the rest of the location cards, and we flip them to their other side and start using them as little tags or aspects up here. And we got, it was named after an insect, one of these cards. I'm gonna use here in a second. Well, I mean, the last card, isn't it? Well, that's one we're gonna need too. I know. It's not important for me to, I don't know why I'm doing this. It's not important for me to find the cards. The cards exist. I didn't make them up. So it's named after an insect. It's made from the remains of a scorpion. And so insect was one of the traits that would link to a different card, to a different creature card. And actually, we'll talk about that in a second. And it's made from the remains of, links to another creature card, which I pulled Scorpion for. It contains an altar, that's another location. And what I ended up doing is I ignored the insect link since I already had Scorpion on it and decided to just combine those two together. So it's named after the scorpion, which makes sense because it's made from a scorpion. I'm like, all right, this must be some sort of big scorpion. So then we have the scorpion tucked under. I pulled the scorpion out and then did stacks for it instead. And for the scorpion, I got it communicates through dreams. So that was already very cool. And it crystallizes on death, which I thought, oh, now it makes sense why there's a crypt that's made out of it, is it turns into crystal. And then you go inside this cool crystal crypt that's shaped like a scorpion. And the scorpion itself is the guardian of a talisman. A talisman is one of the objects. So that was a link. So I went ahead and did altar next, because remember that this crypt contains an altar. So I pulled out the altar card and did my little throwdown for it. A colony of crystalline scorpions instead of a colony of some sort of like vermin or something like that. And it's like, well, obviously that's going to be crystal scorpions. We already got those going on. The altar is frequented by smugglers, and I was like, oh, that's a very interesting one. And the altar induces sleep, dreams, or nightmares. I thought was very cool. I felt like that means the altar plays in immediately to the scorpion's ability to communicate through dreams. Now we have those two things starting to synergize and come together. Then I did the talisman. So, because remember, the scorpion is a guardian of the talisman. Talisman is linked to a story about a tower. Tower is a new location. Like I said, you can keep basically spinning these out until you certainly would use all of these 35 cards, but probably would use all 300 cards in the main deck if you really wanted to. Really just tried to do it, you could probably do it. Or come very close to it. So this talisman is linked to a story about this tower and is used to navigate to the tower. I think it was used to navigate to a place, and I was like, we already have another location. I could already see at this point, this is my first time doing it, and being like, oh, this is really going to spiral out if I don't do some editing while I'm doing this, is that we'll just continue to build out and out and out and out and out. and I only got 35 cards, so I can't do that. I was like, all right, so then we're gonna slip in this location will also be the tower. So it's linked to a story about the tower, and that story is about it's primarily the talisman can navigate you to the tower. And the talisman's got some sort of memory affecting properties. I felt like that felt really in tune with altar that induces sleep, and the scorpions that walk through the dreams. Having this ability that will also affect your memory, and maybe that has something to do with the tower. And I was like, okay, well, if it has something to do for the tower, let's see if we can manifest that when we do the tower. So I did the tower spread. So the tower has a phenomenon of silence around it, so everything is deathly quiet around. Almost like it's got like the D&D silence spell, I'm thinking. Like there is no sound here. And it also moves on its own. So I thought, oh, maybe if it's like a Howl's Moving Castle, like mechanical tower that moves around, and then it makes sense why it has silence cast on itself. That way, nobody can hear it moving around. So that way you have to see it. That's the only way that you'll be able to know where it is. And that it contains some sort of prized water source. So that's why people want it. And I was like, okay, now I'm getting this feeling like we've got the scorpions, we've got prized water source, got this thing that moves around on its own, which is maybe hard to find, and plus like the dreams and illusion kind of stuff all starting to make me feel like, oh, this is very much a deserty kind of adventure area that I'm building. I'm like, oh yeah, it's got the scorpions, it's got things like mirages that you would see, so dealing with like the daydreams and illusions and things of that nature. Having a tower that moves around in the desert by itself, silent tower that moves around, is really, really cool. And having this prized water source within it, why people keep searching for it. We're like, oh, the water could just be regular water, but it could also be like a fountain of youth or a fountain of power, have some sort of magical properties to it. Maybe it's got a pool in it as well. Maybe it's not like a fountain, it's just like a pool of water. Very influential for some reason. So then I took all these things as like, oh, I can, if I wanted to, I could make a full adventure about why you need to go to the crypt that's named after this insect, and it's got this altar inside it, and there's this dream talisman. So there are these smugglers that keep going into this crypt, and maybe there's like, you get the adventurers, you get told, oh, we need to stop these smugglers from going into the crypt, or we assume they've been robbing the graves, they've been taking things from the altar, but they're trying to take this talisman because they're trying to find this place. And maybe these smugglers aren't really smugglers, maybe there's something else. I'm trying to, which always is going to make me think of things like oh, I can't remember what do they call it? The Magi from the Mummy movie? They're the Magi, right? Yeah. Or like the Guardians, but people kind of see them as like thieves and rogues who kind of live on the outskirts of civilization. Something like that, kind of tie that in. Also, obviously very desert related, being in Egypt. So it all starts to very easily kind of, oh, all this stuff really kind of comes together very easily once you start using a little bit of brain power to try to make it go together. So yeah, I mean, if that doesn't sell you on it, it sold me on it. I was like, this is really great. I felt like this is such a significant upgrade from what I got in I kind of picked up in the Deck of Worlds, which felt very you know, compared to what we got out of this, feels almost anemic, like it's underbaked or isn't fully utilized. Maybe it's because it doesn't have the linking aspect, really. But this one is, I think, like a much more fulfilling product to use. Like it's much more fun to use, and as an ability, like a jumping off point inspiration-wise, does a much better job than I felt like I got out of this. So very, very impressed with it. So if you like it, well, you know how to get to their website. It is right here, storyenginedeck.com. Check out the Lore Masters deck. It is a little pricey, I won't lie, but it is a whole bunch of cards. You get 300 of these. So I think we got events is one of the ones that's not in here. We don't have materials. Are those the only two missing? Maybe. Actions, figures, events, locations, objects, materials. Yeah. So you get events and materials is the things that do not come in our little demo deck. But you can see with the pictures kind of like what they look like, what these kind of spreads look like. And these I think are old because I think they have you do 3 spreads instead of 4 for each now. But you can see that there's a card tucked right under here. And once you're done with this one, you will pull that card out and make a new stack with it. There you go. And you get 10% off your first order, apparently. So, yeah, I mean, I think it came out pretty well. I was really impressed with what I got. Now, hey, maybe I've said things and this still isn't kind of your speed yet. Maybe you're looking for something different. If that's the case, they got other stuff. Look at, they got 2 other things. They've got the Deck of Worlds, which is one we talked about previously, which is about building specifically locations and doesn't really have that interlinking aspect. So if that's not important to you, also has a lot more art on these cards than the ones come in the core deck. But we also have Story Engine deck, which is kind of the big mama of it all, which is about creating stories, obviously. So we put these together. So this one I'm not familiar with, so I can't really tell you too much about it. It has 180 storytelling cards featuring stunning artwork on 72 agent anchor prompt cards. Very interesting to kind of give you an idea to build it. And it's a little bit more economically priced if that's where you want to start, or if you are the person who really needs help coming up with like adventure threads or stuff like that. This would probably be helpful for that. Agent, engine, anchor, conflict, and aspect card. If you're looking for something that's an alternative to that, I have had these for a long time and they're fun. These are Storyforge cards. These are a little bit more like the Story Engine cards. They really help you create plots. They're nice, these huge tarot cards. Things, and they're all, in fact, sided. They all have an inverse side. When you draw them and you don't like what's on the top, you flip it over to the bottom. Like, well, this is a classic example. For this one, you can draw, it says victory. Guess what happens if you turn it upside down? Defeat. So, they're very fun. They give you a booklet. I'm not going to pull the booklet out that tells you how to do a whole bunch of like different spreads to put like a tarot spread out for different types of... Oh, well, actually, I will pull it out because I just... Books right here. How to do like different story types and things like that. Let me get to one of the spreads. Yeah, this one. There's like Once Upon a Time. How to do a character backstory. A character quick pick, so if you wanted a much more truncated backstory. Other good stuff. The hero's journey, if you want a big mamma jamma. Really want, because these are supposed to be as pretty much useful for writing as they are for dungeon mastering. The train crash, film noir, love story, the action movie, and the crossroads. Kind of gives you, they're fun. I played with them many times. If you're looking for something else, but again, this is very story focused. You want that? Also, there's just the big books of random tables. I got these a while ago. Was showing them. Open the file location. I think I bought this on like a bundle of holding or something. What? Forever ago. Truly, truly forever ago. Well, forever ago. About 3 years ago, apparently. Thereabouts, or at least that's when I had it. And here, let me switch this over and you guys can see it real quick. Let's swap it over. So I've got a whole bunch of these. Oh. Oh. There we go. Thanks, OBS. So this is the Book of Random Tables. This one's from the 20s and 30s. I also have the 60s and 70s, Ancient World, Cyberpunk, Cyberpunk 2, Dungeons, Eldritch, Fantasy Shops, Inns and Taverns, Modern, Post-Apocalyptic, Quest, Science Fiction, Science Fiction 2, Science Fiction 3, Science Fiction Facility Generator, Steampunk, Wild West, Book of Random Tables 2, 3, 4, and 5, as well as the original, which are going to be all very fantasy-based. Dungeons. 51 Dungeons. Fantasy Towns, Game Mastering Terrain Guide. The great old Book of Random Tables. And Road. I think is, yeah, Fantasy Campaign. So, those things have existed and they've been out here for a long time, so go check those out if you want. If you are like me and maybe you enjoy a roll table that's a little bit better, that will help you with a lot of this stuff. More than that. I would also be remiss if I did not also fling out one of my favorites, even though it is a sci-fi one. Augmented Reality. Man, do I love this book. This is a good one. The goodie. Don't stop. And this is obviously for like a cyberpunk kind of playing, but I really love it. I love that it's dice drop tables on it, which is what that thing on the left is. If you're not familiar with a dice drop table, you literally take dice and you drop it on the page. And wherever they go is whatever you put in there. So you drop it on the grid, you know, hey, what's going on in downtown? What are the shops? What do I see? These are the things you see. Apartment block, Upstack, hotel, Ripper Dock, 3D print fabrication, pop-up market, coffee shop, government building, grocery store, hypermarket, quirky interiors, local conflict, area stuff. This is such a good book. I know I'm getting off topic, but like if you're looking for something that's in a more cyberpunk kind of thing, cannot recommend this book enough. So good. Gives you so much bang for the buck. It's just chock-a-block with this stuff. Like a D10 for data mining. Where are you going to find that? All sorts of good stuff in there. I think they've done another one, actually. Don't know if I have that or not. If not, I probably will pick it up at some point. But that's enough then. So, here's the thing about doing any sort of recommendations for stuff like, hey, do you want resources for coming up with random ideas as a game master or world builder? My best advice is to look around for the specific type of GM or world building stuff that you want and best matches your GM style, because there is so much out there in the wide world of over decades and decades of stuff being put out there that it's really hard to narrow down like what is the best. Well, it's going to depend a lot on what you're looking for and your style. Like I have some stuff up on this shelf that thinking about the D12 roll tables I have that I've had for a long time. I just don't use them very often because they're very, very gonzo. But those are the reviews. Now stick around because we're going to do some more. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jump in and do a doc. Keep it cool, hang out, and I'll be right back. Okay. All right, we are back. Welcome back, everyone. Where'd you go? I left. We were here. I know you. Yeah, so one thing that came to mind when I was taking a drink. Really taste the wildflower. One of the things that came to note that I was thinking about is that, oh right, there was definitely some news in the wait. Well, the Critical Role Council of Darkness wrapped up just what, last week, and we already got the trailer for the new Dimension 20 series, which is apparently going to be babies. So I don't know how I feel about that yet. Again, they gave us literally no information, except they kind of gave us a spooky intro. But then I remembered, oh, but they also gave us a really spooky intro for Perpy for City Council of Darkness. Like the Perpy, yeah, here it is. Welcome to Perpy. Obviously, I can't show that. Stop it right now. Here, let's just... Okay. So it had this very... That's fine. It does not live up to that at all. It's very much a comedy game. And not a serious horror kind of campaign, as we are kind of led to believe here in this teaser trailer. So, I would say that the new teaser trailer has very similar vibes to this one. But now I know better to be like, well, I can't expect that that is indicative of what we're actually going to get. So, I don't know what to feel about it. Also, I'll be super happy if it's like a weird Muppet Babies thing, because I was always a big Muppet Babies fan as a kid. But the likelihood of that is probably low. It's probably going to be something about... I would think that they would probably go back to something that's a little bit more tense now, because it's been a minute since I've done kind of a tense one. So that's my hope, anyways, is that that's what that's going to do. But you never know. So I said that we were... Also, City Council of Darkness was apparently a very polarizing Dimension 20 season. I had no idea. I guess people were upset that they didn't really play the horror of Vampire the Masquerade up to the hilt. And I was like, yeah, I mean, they pretty much just do not care about the Masquerade. It is very clear. Brennan keeps reminding them about the mask. Undercut a little bit what the system could be. If you... I guess I'm dropping connections. Looking great. About the time that I always seem to be... that this seems to come up. That is unfortunate. Alright. Well, maybe we won't. See. Are we still streaming? Yes. Okay. So it looks like we're streaming. Okay. So it looks like we connected again. Alright. Oh, stop. So one of the things that I wanted to do, let's go in here. Is that I wanted to make... I was very much inspired after reading through so many quick starts and all that stuff. I was very much inspired to be like systems that I looked at from Free RPG Day. Really kind of bit me with the bug. Be like, I should do this because it's so well written in the way that it's written. I haven't talked about it yet, so I'm not going to show it off. Because the next one's... and it's not in either of the next two... I'm not saying the next two are bad, they're just not that one. Here in the future. But next time that we do one of these systems, we're going to be doing All Bets Are Off and dropping again. What the hell, man? Very tired of this. I'm hoping once the World Cup is over, which we're very close to, and that this will be done with. I knew why it was doing it. And just dropping it in sort of way. Alright, we'll just keep going then. And hope it just reconnects a little bit. That's one of the things I have been missing on trying when I work on things. I work on just like little pieces here and there, here and there, and here and there, and here and there. I was like, what I really want is a much more framed outline that I can kind of work off, so that way it'll be a little bit more cohesive when I come back to it. So I put that stuff somewhere. Did I bring it in with me? I may have left it out there. May have left it in the other room. It appears I have left it in the other room, so I'm gonna go grab that. So 1 second. I'm really gonna be back in just a second. Gotten the things I forgot to grab. Okay, do. Anyways, I went through a whole bunch of stuff, a whole lot of notes, just to kind of set up what it would look like going. So that's kind of what we're gonna do. A little. I call this. I called it a compendium. How very presumptuous of me. As you might expect, the production. And let's grab them after that. The character creation. And I use this. And second area is playing the game. I feel like combat has enough rules that it should be set off by itself in the same way that Magic is, even though Magic is also part of playing the game. And then we've got our appendices. Here. Appendices, and that will end up going at the end. Which means I will probably want to pull stuff in before it. Which is kind of our... I guess we should technically call it GM. That should... right before the appendices. Feels like a subsection of the GM area. But is also an appendice. Is an appendix. Appendix. Yeah. Yeah, see? Yeah. The stuff that went under the GM section, this is worth noting. Go to the GM. We don't need to make all the subtabs right now, though I probably will turn these all into separate subtabs. Basics. Big one. A little combat encounters. Notice that will be the only encounter building information you will get to the other two pillars. Technically, I would say 3. I think downtime should be considered its own pillar. Magic items. Having seen them in both areas, that I kind of like them being in the player's handbook. I like having the ability for players to sit there and think about, ooh, which which more people will have access to the player's handbook, and then when they need to know stuff about the magic items, it's a much easier reference point instead of having the one DMG that nobody owns except the Dungeon Master. And then, on my other one. So this is what I want to do. As far as, and like I said, I have this other resource that I've been looking through. So I want to use its subheadings as well. I'll go back in and translate some of this back and forth. This is truly just a working session. So if it's not your cup of tea, fully understand. Thanks for hanging out. Like, give us a little subscribe, give us a little engagement, comment down below. Understand. Head on back later on Saturday to see us try out Dark Tides. Or if you want to see our solo RPG, not gonna do it this Saturday, but we'll probably do it next Saturday. Plus, who knows what else we'll be talking about next week? Probably this stuff. All right. Kind of a hard one to. It's very specific for the other game. I'm kind of basing a lot of this on. Well, both have this supernatural aspect to them. Looking at the wrong thing. 5 minutes what an RPG is. Instead of wasting a lot of expensive printing space to tell people basic information that most people who are picking this up will probably already know. Oh yeah, that one was important for that one. So its next one was player characters, which is be under the character creation guide. Go back in. I think that a lot of the stuff that they put in there was very, very useful, though it is very tied to the specific type of game that it is. So I want to start messing with this now because it's been on my mind. So we've got other stuff. I finally, just as of yesterday, finished getting through all the new new free RPG Day content. So trinkets. I put trinkets in there as well. And playing the game. Subheadings. No making a roll? Yeah. There's things like wind roll. Untrained rolls. Have the skill list. Under there. I guess we'll go. Great success. So honestly, that could probably go under determinings. Rolling dice. They have a mechanic for pushing the roll, which I would probably put towards kind of the help action area. Very similar. So strange. I do apologize again for the internet. I don't know why. I go from having perfectly good, normal, stable internet, dropped everything, and it's immediately back. It's very, very frustrating. So we said that's everything as far as like playing the game area goes. So this is very much just the nuts and bolts of like how to do it. NPCs and skills do feel like it would necessarily fall under the GM basics area. I'll leave it where it is for right now because this thing that I'm trying to crib a lot of this information off in the way that it was set up that I thought was very clean and worked very well does not have really a separate GM section like most quick starts don't. Except some quick starts do. But this one does not. So there was no separate place you would put that. Just in the same way that monsters and NPC stats will probably actually end up in the appendix. They're really just gonna do me dirty on this internet situation. Really, honestly untenable. Not good. Yeah. Oh well. There is literally nothing I can do about it. But I do want to keep going. Once we get through this stuff, we will probably kind of call it for today, since the internet is just not going to cooperate with it. Sorry. Tis the way. Says. Alrighty. Let's hop back in. So, under combat. Eve. I feel like I started doing this. Yeah, I feel like all these. Yeah, all these do kind of fall under making a roller test, but it doesn't make that. Maybe they all should. I guess it's not important, right? From Wizard Riders, where you try, there's a way to move yourself in initiative, which is a very cool thing. I love seeing that in more RPGs. Ways to manipulate that a little bit more. Instead of having them do like one turn where they do like 4 different things, and give them different turns, and then as you knock them out of initiative, they lose the ability to get those out. Get them out of my head and onto the page. Swapping the monsters, zones, actions, turn. Here's what you just call it, action. I was gonna say interesting, but more like engrossing. Like it's got a lot of tactical stuff. That's kind of reactions. And after reactions, we have action description. I guess dodge and parry kind of fall under that. You know, I think they're different. Which dodge and parry are really just the reactions. You have grapple. Combat, though most of these do come up in combat, at least in D&D, and I think in a lot of other TTRPGs they usually come up under that. And that is going to be, well, I guess, yeah, we can put it here. Damage and condition. There are lots of things outside of combat. Which are kind of under conditions, kind of not, and so I'm going to leave them how they are right now. Maybe I'll just do it this way. So they have skills that, because it's important to know for like the GM stuff. Like in this game, it has a push the roll mechanic, but NPCs, unless they're very special, NPCs build them and they operate in the same way that PCs do. And I don't think that that's necessarily, it's not been my experience, I should say, that those things work really well. I'm trying to do that for a whole bunch of stuff. It's just it's a bit of an overload, and I don't think that it's not one-to-one. It doesn't play. Ooh, where does that go? Does that go under here? Yeah, I think it goes under here. Toughness, your boss monsters or villains or whatever have their own list of bespoke conditions. They don't use the general conditions list. Very cool. So every encounter is going to feel different with them. They are going to encounter different types of conditions. Permanent effects. We're back to playing the game. Is a condition in most games. And I guess know that it would be terrified. Faint. Frenzy. Which I like that. I like that is, which means that it's kind of like it, very similar to like confusion in D&D, where you don't know. Very much appreciate that. All right, well that was it, because this system doesn't really have spells and things. So they work a little bit different. That's it. That kind of gets us starting off. I mean, I guess we can keep going a little bit. I can add some of this a little bit. We get a few more minutes here. Worlds of Adventure, which is called the D&D area. Any modifiers, advantage or disadvantage for very specific things. But usually you're going to add a number to, like, oh, you're attacking from the high ground, or they're prone, or something like that. I probably put the modifiers, but that's sort of thing. Round down. I guess I would put that under determining success. And specific trumps general. That's not really about rolling though. Where did I put that? Yeah, I guess I put that under RPG. Specific from general. This is a normal guideline because I think that is the way that most TTRPGs, regardless of what you're doing, deals with that. Is that here's a general rule: if you have something that has specific, like only works in one specific case, then you usually go with that one over than what is kind of the general aspect. What would be a good example of that? I don't know, like rogue evasion in D&D, where it's like, oh, when this spell misses, you take half damage because you failed, even if you pass the dex save. And the rogue's evasion works because it specifically says, hey, when you pass a dexterity saving throw, don't take damage. Whereas all spells that deal damage, most of the time you take half damage from. That's kind of the general rule, because it applies to everybody. And then the specificness is that it does not apply to me in this one scenario. Duke. Losing light. Becoming hard to read. I didn't want to get up and turn the light on. The adventure framework and 3 pillars. I don't even know where you would put that. You could put it in the introduction. They have it down in the introduction. I guess here. What is an RPG? I'd probably put the 3 downtime here. Kind of explaining how the game works. I guess you could do it here. It's just because it's just like the framework, right? There is campaign to in this campaign, so it's all the nesting, explaining the nesting. They're all parts of a whole, and they have the Wanda of magic. I think I would probably put under the magic. Is there another one that yeah, we can do combat. I don't think combat's gonna be. We can drop that one in. Bada bing. Initiative. Swapping. I would put surprise right here, and then it makes sense to have the end of combat towards the bottom. So chronologically, it all makes a little bit of sense. because they don't really explain like rounds. Turns, I think that makes sense. Why not? Oh, combat situation. Which could also go under zones and range. So under movement, we'd have like split fire. If we wanted to use them, I probably won't. I don't. Split movement fire is fine, and I've gotten used to it in 5e. But I'm fine not having split movement fire. I feel like there are very few instances that I've played 5e and 5.5 where it has been really, really important to be able to move to a specific area, do a thing, and then move again. Really, it comes up more, I feel like, if you play a ranged character. Because if you play a ranged character, there are a lot of opportunities for you to step into ranged, fire something off, and then step back out of range to ensure that you are not a target for attack. In the same way you might come out of cover to shoot a spell or a bow or whatever, and then go back into cover. Like full cover, like go around a corner, can't be targeted. There's a lot of reasons to do that. But I feel like most of those are very range specific. Like that's where it comes up for the most. Because I'm thinking, like right now I play a ranger, we leveled him up. And he does a lot of that, so it's a lot of like jumping out from a corner, shooting a bow, and then jumping back into a corner. Not because he doesn't have hit points, he's got the most hit points in the party, but it's more like this internet thing's just annoying the absolute crap out of me. Just the absolute crap out of me. But standing up and thrown are linked, so it makes sense to fall under. I believe that's why it's in there. Yeah, grapple and force movement. And there, just as a reminder, not that it really needs a separate section. Size. I'll say modifier. Not really a modifier. It's just about like who can push around, who can you not. Force movement. Squeezing and flying. So, squeeze, I feel like, is a thing that does not come up in 5e. Like, nearly ever. I felt like in Pathfinder and 4e, I was squeezing all the time. There were lots of areas that were not built for medium-sized creatures. I feel like everything in D&D 5th edition is built specifically for medium-sized creatures. You almost never need to squeeze through. Which is good, because squeezing is generally quite bad for you. Not really a place you want to do. You want to move through it quickly, but it is a way to, like, you really want to pinch on some player characters and put them in an area that only small creatures can get through, so then the small creatures get the benefit of it, or make it something that only a tiny creature can get through, and then only the small character can squeeze through it. Reminds me of a very specific situation in which and was like, all right, well, the halfling, this is a tiny size thing, but the halfling is a small size creature, so she can squeeze down into there, but she's going to be the only person who can fit. It's very atmospheric, very much more terrifying, being like, oh, there's nothing we can do to help this person except try to shoot. Where was I? Oh, alternative movement. Squeeze. So this would also go fly here, I guess. Why not? Wish yourself to fly. You need the spell for that. But you can definitely fling yourself off a mountain. Grid rules. Or use grid. And oh, what you can do on your turn. Which I would think would go under action. Go under actions. Fast and slow. I guess technically it goes under fast and slow actions. Yeah. And so we have all our things we can do. We can attack, spell, we can dash, we can engage. Ready. Naming of the actions has been changed a little. Places slightly different. And use object. Use object instead of a utilize action. They really wanted to codify the actions and change. Really. Critical hits. And what is it? These are all useful. You can see based off of like the stuff that I was putting in here, and now we're adding back in all the D&D, like how complicated, like zone combat. At you, technically you get cover from your friend, but your friend does not provide cover between you and the enemy. Duke. Know about kill them now. Attacks. Weapon fighting, grapple, shove. We already got those. Cover. Fighting stuff down here like load. I don't remember it saying anything, but for any sort of ranged weapon. Hover. Thing. Just damage is already such a large thing for D&D, where it's different than other TTRPGs. Some TTRPGs, damages. Healing aspect, which was covered in a different. So I guess probably I should be taking that stuff from damage. Healing. I'm going to read my own handwriting. What else is new? Oh, insta-death. Just not quite healing. I guess I put it down. Non-lethal damage. Less than lethal. There's the D&D under there, but that's great as spot to put it. Have anything here? Different because character creation doesn't have hit points. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this. Maybe it makes sense to go in as kind of a resource, not really a resource. It's treated like a resource when you're playing, but it's not really a resource. Put it there for right now. Really, it's really doing me dirty today. Tons of 8s down instead of bullets. We'll say special combat rule. Like most of our combat is underwater combat. But actually, you know, not too different once you get used to it. Or at least I didn't find it too different. I think certainly 100 feet above him. He can't swing at me. I know we look like we're right next to each other on the grid, but I am 100 feet that away. He can't hit me. Unless you're playing a small creature that can ride like a dog, and you don't come across anything like a ladder, just gonna let you know, yes, you might get into a fight just because you want to bring the dog along. Previous campaign I was playing in before the underwater campaign, same group, also had a dog in it. We had a dog companion. Mount to combat, you have on and off mount. Yeah, we can do it. I think besides the lance in 5e or 5.5 D&D, I don't think there's any weapons that give you specifics benefits. Thanks, of course, for hanging out with me, taking a look at stuff. Hopefully you enjoyed and got some good stuff out of the things that we looked at, especially the Wizard Riders and Lord Masters page for you to be able to download. So go and give it a check out yourself, whether that's through Catalyst page or Drive Through RPG. Like thing, the subscribe thing, leave me a little comment for engagement. That's always muchly appreciated. We got links down in the description if you want to look at other stuff. This Saturday we should be playing Dark Tide, so if you want to come see a micro TTRPG, it's literally what, 2 pages